Hello, welcome to our Women Today table talk. I get so excited every time when I come and sit at this table. And today, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by none other than my sister. She's not a stranger, this one. She's a sister that I have known for so many years. And one thing I like about this lady, she has got the beauty as well as the brains. So welcome, my sister.
Thank you.
So that's my sister Precious. Welcome and thank you so much for coming to join me at this table discussion. I'm excited. You look beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
As always.
You look beautiful as always as well.
You look so beautiful. Anyway, thank you really for joining us. And you know what? I'm very excited. I was really excited, to have you at this table discussion. One thing that I know is you're one lady that I've known for so many years. And, for all these years I've known you, I've seen you evolving and really developing yourself as a woman. And I think you've been going from beauty to beauty. And we always say from glory to glory.
Amen.
So, yes. And I know a lot about yourself and I know you. But again, just tell me about yourself. Who's Precious?
Right. Okay.
And because some of our people that are watching might wonder who's this beautiful lady. So tell me about yourself.
All right. So I'm Precious Charuma. I'm a mom to a 17-year-old daughter.
Okay.
But I'm also a therapist. I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Okay.
Currently working in the NHS, but I'm also doing my training as an interpersonal psychotherapist. So kind of coming towards the end of that. Interpersonal psychotherapy is a therapy for depression. So with CBT it covers most common mental health problems. I was going to ask
big words, big words. Yes,
So I've been doing that. I've worked in primary care mental health in the NHS on and off for the last, I think it's coming up to 13, it's 13 years actually.
Wow.
And then I left the NHS at one point, went to work for a veterans charity in the Northeast, helping to set up their psychological therapy service in the Northeast. So I did that for a couple of years before going back to the NHS.
Okay. You're very experienced. Obviously, you've said quite a bit of experience there. And I'm sure you know that here at Women Today, one thing that we do is we empower women, we signpost them, we educate them. And I think this is part of education as well. In terms of mental health, what can you empower these women? Somebody who's listening right now, what can you talk about some of the experiences? Because you and me knows that especially within the BME community, the word mental health does not exist, or it does exist, but people choose to not really know about it. And as a Christian as well, sometimes if somebody's going through mental health, if they start saying, look, I'm hearing voices, the first thing that they do is, let's cast the devil out of you. And so just talk to me a bit about that. What can you advise somebody, like with the work that you're doing? What exactly is mental health or CBT, like you've mentioned?
I think with mental health, I think the first thing to understand is that mental health is on a spectrum. So we've got, things maybe on the lower end of the spectrum, what we call the common mental health problems. So things like depression, anxiety, OCD, health anxiety, PTSD. So they are classed as the common mental health problems because they are that common. And I think with the statistics, I think 1 in 4 people will experience a common mental health problem at any point in their life, so depression or anxiety. So it's very common. And then we've got like on the higher end of the spectrum where we've got the long and enduring mental health problems. So things like schizophrenia, psychosis and all of that. So I think when we talk about mental health, people assume that it's more on the higher end of the scale. But what we know is actually most people suffer from depression and anxiety, sometimes without even realizing that they suffer from depression and anxiety. And I think the other important thing as well to acknowledge is that with mental health problems, a lot of the time they can be managed, so with the right support, with the right therapy, the right medication, these conditions can be managed effectively and people can live quite fulfilling lives, despite having, diagnosis of mental health.
That's really good to know, because I think I like the way you've just really explained it and sort of separate things, because when you talk of mental health, somebody's thinking of a mad woman or mad man screaming outside there, but I think you've really explained it very well. And during we've just come out of the lockdown and people were really going through a lot of mental health issues. We had people that have lost jobs, divorce rate went really high, domestic abuse went really high. And there are people, there's someone right now listening and they're actually going through a lot of things, they've lost jobs. What can you tell them about these signs? What are the signs that they can actually say, okay, I think I need help, or I'm not okay? Because sometimes we see it, but we sort of like overlook it. What are the symptoms or the signs that you can say, look, if this is, and this is happening to you, get help?
Yeah, I think I'll try and kind of simplify and just explain things like, you know, with depression and anxiety, because I think those are the more common, you know, issues that people in those situations might experience. So with depression, there's often kind of feeling low. So you feel low, you feel depressed, you feel tired a lot of the time. So you've got no energy, you lack motivation, your sleep is affected. So sometimes people might sleep more, they might sleep less, or they might sleep but wake up during the night. Your appetite's affected, so you might eat more, you might eat less. It affects as well how you interact with people. So sometimes people find that they're starting to withdraw, you know, from family or friends, but also from activities. So people might stop doing things that they enjoy. So you might find that maybe if you used to enjoy watching TV, you no longer find enjoyment from that, so you stop doing that. But another big thing is often, particularly with depression, people start to experience feelings of hopelessness, which can then lead to thoughts of suicide or thoughts of self-harm. So where people might start to think that they may be better off dead, or, you know, wanting to hurt themselves. And often with the self-harm, it might be an emotional release as well. So that might be a strategy to cope with the overwhelming feelings of depression. So those are like I guess an overview of the cluster of symptoms for depression. And with anxiety, it's feeling nervous, feeling on edge, you know, things like sometimes your heart starts to race, your breathing changes as well. You find that if you're in certain situations, you get an overwhelming feeling of panic. You know, so sometimes people will then start to avoid things, so they'll avoid situations or people that make them feel worse. Anxiety can also affect your sleep, you know, so where people are worried a lot, you might find that you struggle to switch off at night. So you know you don't sleep well, so you find that you struggle to fall asleep, or again you're waking up during the night, or you're waking up quite early, you know, because of the anxiety. So that's like I guess
like
just
sort of the
summary
signs that people can actually look into. And I think, you know, it's and I like what you're saying there, because it's very, some people can actually recognize the signs and the symptoms, but it's actually knowing that, do I need that help, or what do I need? And I know you as a professional, do you meet so many people from the BME community? Do they access your services? Is the ratio high, or what do you think? Is you know, tell me more about that.
I think with the people from BME communities, they are what we call kind of, I guess, hard to reach, you know, communities. So we don't see as many people. So we know that there are people suffering from those, you know, those conditions, but they don't tend to access services, you know. And again, there's a lot of factors that maybe impact on that. It can be cultural, and those beliefs around what it means to have mental health as well. They might be fear, just, you know, general stigma around mental health. Sometimes not even knowing that, you know, these services exist, because on the NHS, certainly in England, there's free, you know, you can access therapy for free on the NHS.
I don't think maybe some people actually knows that. And I know you've used the term hard to reach. And I had a discussion with somebody a few weeks ago, and she was talking about, again, the hard to reach. And we had a very interesting conversation. I was like, are they really hard to reach, or is it because they actually don't know? Because sometimes, you know, when you don't know, and I think like you mentioned here, there's a bit of culture involved here, and because there's stigma attached to it, so it's a bit of both, isn't it?
It is.
It's a bit of both, and I think it's just recognizing that and say, look, I need help. And I think this is why we're here today. I like the fact that we're here today to educate other people, for them to realize, look, there's actually help there. You don't have to struggle by yourself at home, because I know people are going through a lot.
They are.
You talk about, like, you know, the whole domestic abuse that, you know, we just mentioned here. During the lockdown, so many high rates of domestic abuse. And I know in not just women, men as well. People went through so much, and I think sometimes it's finding the right people to talk to. Is that having that support? Tell me a little bit about, you know, cases that you know, obviously without going into detail, any cases that you have helped somebody. And I think the reason I'm saying this, and I want somebody who's listening, I want you to talk to this camera to say, look, we're at this situation, or we had this case of somebody came in like this, but they managed to, a good testimony, I would say, like, okay, they've managed to, their lives have been transformed, their lives have been changed. Maybe people that you have helped personally, and again, you being from a black woman, and I think people hearing from you, they might like, oh, I can actually get some help.
Yeah. I think, maybe because from a professional perspective, I've not had that many people who've come through, you know. I've not, you know, certainly from BME communities, I don't know if maybe that's just, you know, how things are, but I've not had anyone personally on my caseload in all the time that I've worked, you know, who's come through, you know, for support. But I have linked in, because sometimes I'm asked to link in with, you know, kind of local organizations, you know, kind of charities and stuff, to give talks, you know, and we really break things down about what depression is, what anxiety is. And I think, you know, the feedback that I get, that, you know, people will say, oh, you know, I didn't even know, or I know someone. Because I remember there was one time I was asked to speak somewhere, and someone actually, you know, kind of came forward and said, all these things that you're talking about, this is all the things that I have. But then again, the fear of, do I go
being
forward
labeled and stuff.
Exactly, you know. And I think the fear is, well, people don't realize that in terms of confidentiality, I think that's the other fear of, if I go, my, you know, all my stuff will be out on the street, but it's confidential. Like I'm bound by my own professional code of, you know, code of conduct. You know, the NHS has got a really strict policy around data protection, GDPR and all of that, you know. And also as well, if you come into a service, so let's say someone here in Darlington wants support, and they know that Precious works in Darlington, they can ask for their notes to be locked, so I can't.
You can't,
even if I wanted at some point, you know, not that I would, but you know, if I did come across their notes, I won't be able to access, because they'll be locked, you know, to me. So
it's very interesting, because you being a black woman, and then you've never had experience with other black people, and I think this is why we are here. And I think I get excited, not because obviously it's a negative thing, but I think the fact that you're actually there, and you know, and people are going through mental health issues, you know, going through depression, anxiety, and all these things going on, but you still have not really met BME women in person to see them. And come to think of it, we've got so many. And I think I think from today you're going to be seeing so many women.
I hope so. That would be,
So when many women and men, because then I think I get excited, because that's the reason we're doing what we're doing today, is to raise that awareness so that people can actually see, look, there's actually help out there, because the truth of the matter is people are struggling. People are really suffering, and some of them are suffering in silence, and they just don't know. They don't have anyone to talk to. Some of them, they don't have relatives, you know. And there are some people who are lucky they have sisters or brothers, but there are some people who are actually very lonely and have got no one to talk to whatsoever. And so you mentioned CBT, which is a very big, strong word. And they always give these big words. Explain to me about what is CBT, because somebody's like, what is CBT?
So CBT basically stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. So the cognitive side is the thought side of things, and then the behaviors is the behavior. So the theory behind CBT is that the way that we think, feel and behave is linked. So often when people are experiencing depression or anxiety, they're caught in a bit of a vicious cycle where there's a lot of negative thinking, which then affects negatively on how you feel, and then people do things as a way of trying to cope with how they feel. A good example would be with depression. So with depression, if someone's feeling depressed, they have a lot of negative thoughts. So people might start to think, what's the point? Things will never change. I'm better off not here. You know, my life's a mess. That then leaves them feeling even more depressed, and then the more depressed they feel, it affects their motivation, it affects their energy levels. So people then start to withdraw from people, because they don't want to bring other people down, or they don't want people to know what they're going through. They stop doing things because they're not enjoying things as much, which then reinforces those thoughts of, what's the point? Maybe I'm better off not here. Exactly. And then it just becomes that vicious cycle.
It does.
So that's what CBT looks to address. So we look at working on the thought side of things. So what we call put simply what we call thought challenging. So looking at, those thoughts, taking a step back from the thoughts and exploring, so this is what you're thinking, but how realistic is it for you to think that way? Is there a different way of looking at things? And then with the behaviors, for depression particularly, it's about getting people back into doing the things that they used to do before.
Right.
So gradually kind of getting them back into some sort of a routine where they get a balance between doing the things that they enjoy, things that give them a sense of achievement, and also a sense of closeness to others.
Wow. And I think if somebody's being affected, whether that's a mother or a dad, it also affects the children as well.
Yeah.
And again, I think, we just mentioned about the lockdown again. This one did not just affect the mothers or the fathers, it affected the children.
Yeah.
And I want you to look at this camera. Maybe there is a mom or a dad, they're having a teenager or they're having a child. You have a child yourself, you probably know what I'm talking about. What are the signs that they can actually look at, that they can actually help their son or their daughter? Because especially in terms of the men or the young men, a suicidal rate is very, very high. What are these, what can you say to this mother? Look for this in your child, and get some help and do this. So talk to this camera and I
would say any slight changes, no matter how small, any changes in their behavior. So you might notice that your child is maybe sleeping a lot more. They're not, if they were maybe outgoing before, they've become more withdrawn, so they're spending a bit more time alone in their bedroom. They're not doing the things that they used to enjoy. So if they used to go out a lot more, they're maybe not doing that as much. If they used to enjoy sports and activities, if they stopped doing that. I think the biggest thing, particularly around children, is when children become very withdrawn, that's often a really big sign as well. Or and with things like self-harm, if you're noticing that maybe even in hot weather, they're wearing long-sleeved things as well, because often that's a way to try and cover up for the scars and stuff. Or if you notice that they've got some scars or marks that you weren't aware of before, try and find a way of kind of speaking to them, finding out what's going on, which is why I think as parents we've got a duty to, because again culturally I think as parents we were brought. I never used to talk about how I felt, with my parents because that just wasn't done.
Yeah, feelings don't exist.
They don't exist.
You crack on with what you're doing. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think people sort of carry that. How we were raised, how my mother or how my parents raised me is how I'm going to raise my children. And sometimes we tend to forget that. It's not really about an African thing, but here it's different. Yeah. I always wanted to raise my daughter the way I was raised, and I think I sort of got the sort of no thing, because the culture is different. Yeah. And I'm telling you, don't do this. I never used to do like this, and
they're more empowered and more aware as well, and very, I guess, more confident. Like with my daughter as well. There were things, even at a young age, I would be like, I would never dream of saying things like that or doing things like that at an age. But because they taught from a very young age to be individuals, be yourself, do all these things.
Do the things and
so I think it's important as parents to encourage that, so that when kids are struggling, they can easily come up. And even you as a parent, you are able to kind of pick up on those things a lot sooner if you've got that relationship where, you know what's going on in your child's life. And again, the other thing as well is things like substance abuse as well, because often where children are, or anyone really, where they're struggling, often they'll turn to substance as a way of masking how they feel. So if you start to notice that your child's drinking a lot more, or again, things are a bit off in terms of their behaviours, it's worth looking into as well.
Like that,
especially with, it's depending on the age, where if a child maybe is at that age where they're relying on pocket money, but then they're needing a lot more money than they're constantly asking for money. That should be a bit of a red flag, because it might mean that they're involved maybe in something else.
Or something else on the side. So it's what you're saying here as well is spend more time with your kids.
Yes,
because
basically.
I know in this country where everybody's working so hard, it's shift after shift, and everybody's tired, and especially the bills have gone really high, and everything has gone high, and I think people tend to just focus on work and really not spend time with their children. And again, by not spending time with our children, we can miss out some of these things that we can actually be able to say, I think my daughter needs help, or I think my son needs help. And I think, like I said, I think mental health is huge. One of the things I think we want to touch about is you know, if someone is wounded, it's easy to see the wound. You know, it's clear for me if I have a bruise, you can see the bruise and you can ask, you know, okay, what's wrong with you? But I think in terms of mental health, it's very difficult to find. It's very hidden, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's something you have to really look into more, spend time with people and see them. And I think last week I was discussing with some of the ladies and I said, especially now, it's always important to look out for each other. You know, just if you have a friend, if you have a sister, it doesn't harm to say, hi, how are you? Is everything okay? And we were talking earlier on about, you know, a lady was killed and people dying and just checking out on each other. You know, life is yes. Tell me more about I didn't want to touch on the men more, but on the children, I think we have discussed more about that. I'm trying to think as well, do you have anything else that you want to say before we close after filming? Anything that you want to say to people? Anything at all that can empower the ladies?
I think, just that, you know, help is available, you know, and everyone goes through periods where, you know, you feel, you know, a bit low or a bit depressed, you know, but I guess another thing as well to point out is the cluster of symptoms that I've described. It's when those symptoms maybe persist for at least 2 weeks. So if it's been going on for longer than 2 weeks, go to your GP, you know, contact your GP, let your GP know. Your GP can either refer you in to, you know, your local therapy service, or if you're in England, you can self-refer as well. So you don't need to, you know, to get your GP to refer you in.
So can they do it online?
They can do it, so depending on the area that you know, so if you just go into Google and just search for IAPT, IAPT, IAPT service, and the area that you're in, it will bring up, you know, your local services, and you can start from there, or even mental health services, you know, within your area, and you can self-refer. And most services now, again, thankfully, you know, because of the lockdown, you can refer online, because before it used to be telephone. So if it was weekend, you know, you'd have to wait until Monday to refer. But because of, you know, of COVID, most services now have online forms where you just fill the form online and you refer yourself in. You know,
I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, so I want you to look at this camera, and then tell them about, like, where can they find these services? The help is there. What do you need to do?
So you can contact your GP. Your GP is always the first, you know, point of contact, a really good point of contact. So they can refer you to your, you know, your local mental health services. Or for some people who prefer medication, where they might not want to go down the therapy route, you can have that discussion with your GP as well. Or, like I said, you know, search online for your local mental health service. So if you search for, if you're in England, it's IAPT, IAPT, so Improving Access to Psychological Therapies. So if you search IAPT services and you know, your local area, that should bring up your local service. You know, so you can self-refer to the services as well. But there's also the Samaritans. They open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their number is 116 123, so you can contact them. I know they've got like an email as well, so you can email them. And I'm not sure if they still have like the messaging service as well, but you know, you can contact them via the phone, 116 123, if you're feeling suicidal, or if you just need someone to speak to. But for those as well who've got to that point where maybe for whatever reason things have escalated and you're feeling really overwhelmed and you're worried about keeping yourself safe, so you're worried about maybe thoughts of suicide or thoughts of self-harm, again, go into your onto Google, search for crisis team and your local area. So, for example, if you live in Middlesbrough, you search crisis team Middlesbrough, and that will bring up the local number for your crisis team. And crisis teams are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So initially, what they do is when you contact them, they do like a brief assessment over the telephone, take your details, and then, you know, from that they'll be able to either just give you information depending on the severity of the problem. They'll give you information and advice and signposting, or if you're at that point where, you know, they feel that they need to intervene, they would then come out and do an assessment and come up with a plan for ongoing support until you get to that point where you're able to manage your safety. But I always say just getting yourself to A&E as well, if you can't contact your crisis team, because within most hospitals, there's a specialist team called the psychiatric liaison team. So they linked into A&E. So they would then be able to do an assessment and again, you know, put the support in place, or call 999 as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, you know, because you've been working for many years, very experienced in your role, and I like that. And I think the good thing about in this country, in the UK, all these services available for anyone who needs that. And I know I'm going to sort of like flip on the other side, because now we have women today in South Africa, women today in Zimbabwe, women today in Kenya, women today in Dallas, and we're now heading on to Congo.
Wow.
And I know, so this is slightly very different. Now, you know, the services there is completely different from here. And I know your experience is best on here. What can you say to those women in Kenya, in South Africa? I know their services are different, you know, the organizations are different. Somebody's going through mental health problems, you know, someone who's really struggling. What advice can you give them?
In Zimbabwe, actually, there's a new, well, it's not new, but there's a really good organization.
Wow.
And I think recently they've received funding from the former Mrs. Gates, is it Melinda Gates? Okay. It's called the Friendship Bench. So it started as peer support for mental health. So they trained elderly women, you know, to give advice and support. So it would be like in a bench in a local, so in the village they would have a bench, so you'd go there for advice. You know, so it's kind of peer-led support, but it's grown now. So in Zimbabwe, if you actually search Friendship Bench, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook. You can search online as well, so you can actually refer into them. Service, you know, their support is free. They can do support on WhatsApp as well. The Friendship Bench. It's led by Dr. Dixon Chibanda as well. He's a psychiatrist. You know, so that was his initiative, and I think they're actually trying to roll it out in the UK as well. I've just read recently that they're trying to roll it out in the UK as well.
Thank you for that information. I think we can get our Women Today team leaders in Zimbabwe to also link in as well. And I think it's good, because sometimes you can be in a town and not really know about some of the services that are available for you, because I remember when I came here, all these services were there, but I didn't know how to access them. I didn't even know that they do exist. So it's actually good to know that they can actually access services in Zimbabwe. But then those in Kenya or Congo, they're going through mental health issues. Quickly, what can you say to them?
I would say, you know, again, because it's difficult, because you know, I'm not very familiar with what's on the ground.
Africa,
but you know, finding someone you can confide in, you know, be it like, you know, someone from your church,
or your auntie, your community,
exactly, you know, because sometimes just by sharing it, it lessens the load as well. You know, they say a problem shared is a problem halved. You know, so just find someone that you can confide in, share with them what you're going through. Don't be ashamed, you know, of because like I said, these are common mental health problems.
People are embarrassed, and don't be embarrassed.
Don't be embarrassed, you know. You know, so find someone that you can share with, even things like postnatal depression. I didn't know that postnatal depression existed until I came to the UK. You know, but those are things that, you know, and again, I suppose in our culture, we've got systems in place to help, you know, that traditionally used to help, so that those things weren't quite as, you know, as prominent.
Remember that, right.
But then now, you know, with the way things have evolved as well, there isn't that much support. So people, you're finding that people are struggling, you know, with things like postnatal depression. So if you're finding, you know, you're a new mom, you're struggling to bond with the baby, you know, you're struggling with low mood, again, just find someone to speak to, because again, that's very common. And with the right support, you know, it can be managed.
And I think it's the terms that they use, because I remember like what you're saying with postnatal depression, and I remember the midwife said to me, oh, you have this, and I said, no, I don't, because I just had the word depression. But then she went deeper and said, okay, are you sleeping? Is your mood okay? Is like this and this, and I'm like, no, everything ticked the box that I was actually going through that. But for me, it was the term, and for me, I was like, well, I'm not going to really go that low, but I think it's not really about going low, it's just finding the right support as well, and then when you're supported, and I think it helps a lot of things. And so lastly, I'm enjoying this conversation.
Me too.
What made you do the things that you're doing, like your role? What made you decide, I'm gonna go into this? Because not many people do that. What made you do that? I know this is a bit personal, but slightly different. What made you, because you're passionate, and when you're talking, I can feel the passion, and I can actually know that you're knowledgeable in what you're saying. So what made you do that?
I think I was drawn because initially, I think, you know, it was one of those things where I didn't realize the opportunity until like now when I look back and I think, wow, because I think I was, you know, again, at the right place at the right time, because I got this job in 2009.
Wow.
And that was the time when the government was, the UK, the English government was starting an initiative improving access to psychological therapies, and they were training people up.
Wow.
You know, so you actually got on the job, you still get like on the job training, you know, so you're trained to, you know, to kind of deliver, you know, therapy. And I did that. And at the time I was like, oh, you know, and it was only later on I realized the number of people who had applied and, you know, and all of that. And then I think once I got into it, you know, the passion for me
is there.
and just seeing the difference that you make to people's lives, you know, so when you've finished working with someone and, you know, like last year, you know, I got like a really lovely card and, you know, a gift from a patient because they were like, you know, I've been struggling for so long.
But thank you for helping
and thank me for help, you know, thank you for helping me. So it's things like that when you see the difference that you can make, you know, to other people's lives. I think that's what drives me and motivates me.
You do it so well. You do it so well.
You.
And I think, and not that I think, I know that from today's session, somebody's really been helped. And I know you were doing your own sessions as well. Is it like Zoom sessions or some platform? You're on a platform and we're talking about you having your own podcast as well. So that's something that people can look up to because I know there are people that are listening now and they might need help. And somebody might wants to reach out to you. Is it something that, you know, we can refer people to you or, you know, I don't know, tell me more about, are you going to do the podcast again? Are you going to do your YouTube videos? Something that people can look forward to?
Yeah, I think because at the moment I'm quite limited in time because I'm doing training in another type of therapy, so interpersonal psychotherapy, which I'm coming towards the end of. So once I've done that, then I can kind of, I'll have a bit more time to do the podcast. But in terms of like, you know, if people are looking for support, they can contact me. I've got a Facebook page. It's called LT Psychotherapies. So if you just search LT Psychotherapies on there, I'm on Instagram as well. Just send me a message and then I can see how I can help. So if I can't, I always try, if I can't help, I always try and kind of signpost, where I can.
It has been a pleasure having you around. I've been enjoying, and the thing is, you know, you have a conversation with somebody that you don't want to stop. And I've also learned a lot myself as well. And I know the viewers have actually learned a lot. And I think for us, we're not just going to stop from learning, but we're going to empower women. We're having testimony, somebody to come and say, after listening to your program, my life has been transformed. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for coming and for joining us. And to all our viewers there, thank you so much for joining us. Look, I've enjoyed this and I know you have as well. So thank you so much. If you had this yourself, that if you need any help out there, you're going through mental health, you're not sleeping, you're not eating very well, some of the signs and the symptoms that you think, what's happening to me? You know what? Get some help. There's help out there. And if you need to talk to somebody, get a sister, get a friend, just talk. Don't suffer alone. Don't go through things alone, because there are organizations that can actually help you, and there are different individuals as well that can actually help you. So don't struggle by yourself, because mental health does exist and people are going through a lot. So I'm sure you have enjoyed, because I have. And so thank you so much for joining us. From myself, Locardia Women Today Table Talk, and from our guest here, Precious, we just want to say thank you so much. Thank you and very goodbye.